Hey guys, and welcome to today's episode. Today's episode we have the interview with Paulo Vitor Damo Da Rosa, and this interview is with the world champion. We did experience some technical difficulties. I apologize for that. It was my gamble that my computer was being fixed at the moment when I recorded the video, but we're all set now and he agreed to do it again. So before we go into the video, I want to thank our sponsors, Game Inc. and Dex. Both are linked in the description of this video. And also, before we go to the video, if you enjoy this content, comment, like, and share this video, as well as subscribe. So if you haven't done so already, that will greatly help us, and we do appreciate it. Also, comment who do you want to see next, and we will take that into consideration and maybe try to get .pro to do an interview with us. So without further ado, let's jump into the video. So hi, Paulo. Hopefully I don't butcher your name. I'm not very well versed in Portuguese. I have a couple of friends that are from Brazil because I used to be in the oil field. So I have a lot of friends from Brazil, and it's a great country from what they told me, and I can tell you that it's great people. So why don't you introduce yourself for our audience?
So my name is Paulo Vitor Damo Da Rosa. I'm the current world champion. So I've been playing Magic professionally for about 20 years almost at this point, I would say. So I've been Player of the Year, I've won Pro Tours, I've won Grand Prixes, Nationals. So I think I've done most of what you can accomplish in Magic, and I just recently became world champion, which is the thing that I was missing the most.
Correct.
So yeah, just a professional player who's been around for many, many years.
And what would you feel that is your biggest accomplishment? Obviously Worlds, but what do you think is the biggest one that you say, you know, I really went through this one and I didn't know if I was going to make it? Maybe for some people it's the first tournament they go to, you know. Maybe that's their hardest.
No, I think it's definitely Worlds for me because, you know, for such a long time, I felt like I had every other accomplishment and I was missing this one and I could never get it. And it's so hard to get because, you know, the Pro Tour, obviously the Pro Tour is hard, but there are 4 or 5 a year. Right? And Worlds, there's once a year, and it's very hard to qualify to. Like, I'm automatically qualified for every Pro Tour, but not for every Worlds. So whenever you play World Championship, and you're, like, the first World Championship that, not the first, but the first of the new type of Worlds that I played, I got to the top 4. And it was like, well, this was such a missed opportunity because I don't know if I'm even going to be playing this tournament next year, right? And then I didn't. I didn't play the tournament the next year, and I didn't play for the year after either. So it is the hardest tournament to get to. It's the hardest tournament to win, even though it's not that many people. And also it means the most for anyone who is outside of Magic, right? Because I think, you know, if you tell someone I was Player of the Year, like, they're going to think it's cool, but it doesn't have the same vibe as, you know, I'm the world champion.
The same ring to it, right? The same ring that you are the champion.
Yeah, so that is definitely, I think, what I would consider my biggest accomplishment. I mean, I don't think there exists a bigger accomplishment in anything than being world champion, right? Like, in any sport, it's just, you're just the best in the world. That's what it means, right? And you can't be better than that. So correct. I think that is my biggest accomplishment.
I do agree with you. So when did you start? You said 20 years, but why did you start to play Magic? Who introduced you to this wonderful world of Magic the Gathering?
So I started more than 20 years ago. I was 8, and I'm 33 now, so I started 25 years ago. I read about the game in a magazine. You know, it was a magazine about Saint Seiya. It's an anime. I don't know if people are going to know what it is, but I really liked it as a kid, so I was reading a magazine about it, and they had this advertising for Magic. And even when I was very young, I really liked, you know, card games. I really liked fantasy in general. So like dragons, magic, spells. It was very appealing to me. And I liked card games. I played some card games with my family, and I always wanted to play more. So I felt, oh, this is a card game, and the setting is fantasy, so it has 2 of my interests, so I'll probably like it. And then I had my mom call the number, and she found out where I could buy this stuff. And that's basically it. She took me to the store alongside a friend, and I started playing and never stopped.
Never stopped ever since. When do you find it? Because I mean, we all play, right? And we all think we can do better, or we think we're good. But when do you thought you were, you know what, I'm a very good player?
It's hard because people always ask, when did you decide to become a professional player, right? And I don't think I ever did. It was something that happened very naturally. Because when I went to my first pro tour, it was Worlds in 2003. I was 15, right? So I was very young. I was still in school. I didn't have to have a job, right? It wasn't a moment in my life where I needed a job at all. So I just went because it was like I'm doing this thing during school when I'm good. So I'm going to go to, regionals, nationals, and eventually the international tournament. But it wasn't different than someone, in the glee club, right? Or, someone who plays soccer in school. And then they find out that they're really good and start competing and start doing better and like competing and doing more. And then eventually I joined college, and then I started doing well. I continued doing well in Magic, but I was in university. So it also wasn't a moment in my life where I needed a job, right? I was living with my parents, I was studying. All I had to do was basically complete university. And then when it became the time where I needed to have a job, right, when I wanted to get married and move outside my parents' house, and I needed a job for that, then I already had one, right? So it wasn't, I never chose do I have to go, there wasn't this fork in the road, where I had to choose a career or choose Magic. I basically always played Magic, and by the time I needed to make this choice, it was already made for me. I liked it,
and that was that, right? Sometimes it just falls to it, right? It defaults. So your biggest accomplishment was Worlds. So that was another question I had, and what do you consider? Because a lot of people in the Magic community that are not pro players, which is most of the Magic community, have a very divided opinion about brewing your own deck or net decking. What is your personal opinion, and what is your personal view? Because I know you play on a team, and that also plays into it, right? You come up with an idea, because somebody has to come up with the idea for the deck, right? And then it obviously goes through a lot of testing. But what is your view on brewing or net decking a deck?
I think there are arguments for both, right? It depends on what you're looking to get out of the game. I think it was Patrick Chapin who said, it was something like, if you're not at least 25% brewer, you have no heart. And if you're not at least 25% net decker, you have no brain, right? So it's most people will fall in some point in the spectrum that is not an absolute, right? I think brewing is definitely more fun and more interesting. Right, I enjoy brewing a lot more than I enjoy playing a deck over and over and over. But net decking is just more effective nowadays. It used to not be the case, right? It used to be that we would have a team get together and, brew for 2 weeks and come up with this best deck. And that was just a different deck that no one had. That was very satisfying. But nowadays, I feel like information is so out there. Everything is out in the open. Everything is online and people share all the information that all the decks are already found. For the most part, if something is good, it is found very quickly and spread through the world. For example, take Saheeli and Felidar, right? I don't know if you were...
Yep.
So we were testing for a tournament, and then the Saheeli Ray and Felidar Guardian, or I think that's what it's called. Yeah. I don't even remember.
The cat.
Felidar, they were the cat. Yeah, they were a 2-card combo, right?
Yes.
And as soon as the cards were spoiled, there were 100 tweets about it. So you literally could not have missed this combination if you're paying any attention to what was happening in Magic. Whereas I feel like, 10 years ago, maybe this would be a combination that would be like, oh, we found this combination is really good. We'd build a deck, we'd show up in the tournament, and then we'd kill someone with it on turn 4, and they wouldn't even know what happened.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah,
but nowadays it's impossible. Nowadays you could not miss this interaction if you tried, because the moment, before the deck was even playable, right? Before the card was available to be bought, everyone was already talking about it. So there just isn't that much room to brew anymore in competitive Magic, unfortunately, because it is more fun. So you have to dedicate more time to mastering your deck and tuning, the last couple of slots and sideboarding. So if you want to succeed, that's what I always, people ask me a lot if they should, try to come up with their own decks or just try to get better with the best deck. And I think the answer is, honestly, if you want to have fun and enjoy Magic in your own way, then you do whatever you like. right? You don't need my answer for that. You just do whatever you like. But if your goal is winning, then you're more likely to win if you just get a deck that exists and just practice with it the entire time. And don't worry about making your deck, don't worry about anything like that. Just basically play the deck as fast as you can and maybe tune a couple cards. But that is the unfortunate reality that we live in right now in this world with the internet and all the information is spread, is that there's not a lot of brewing to be done.
I agree. I was playing, I think, back in September, I was playing Arena. I downloaded it when it was in beta, and I started playing it again. And I was playing, I think it was Grixis Control. And unfortunately, I went all the way up to Mythic. Not Mythic ranked, but I went all the way up to Mythic. And I played against the number one. So I was shitting bricks. I was like so nervous, excited. I got the first game, and then he got me the next two. And then, but he was playing basically the same deck I was playing, but he did a couple of things that were odd. He had more than 60 cards in the deck, and he was playing cards that nobody was playing that were in the colors, and that he saw huge advantage. And I was like, that's what the difference is from being just a good player, a regular player, and being the number one in the world. And it's funny that you touched that subject right now, because you can tweak just a little bit and make it your own, but obviously efficiency is king in this game. And I think they break the format so fast that it's just crazy.
Yeah.
And so another question I had was, obviously we all know you're getting a card, and you're gonna be part of the game forever. But which one before this one, I guess, which one was your favorite card, your pet card, if you will?
So it was Vendilion Click, which is part of the reason why I like Elite Spellbinder so much, right? Because it is actually very similar to my favorite card. It's there's a lot of resemblance there. But yeah, I think Vendilion Click is a card that I played a lot with. I had a lot of success with. And also, it's just the perfect card because I think it's very good, it's very strong, but it's not broken. Right?
Correct.
Because it's easy to make a card that is very strong and it's too good. Like, Oko, Uro, those are cards that are obviously too strong. But Vendilion Click is it's just strong enough that I want to play with it every time, but it's not strong enough that it has to be banned. Right? So it's at a perfect power level for me. And it just offers you so many choices, right? Because you can play it at any time. It has flash. Then you can target you or your opponent, so you have a choice there. Then you can take a card or not, so that's another choice. So you many people would play this card in many different ways, right? So it's super versatile, and I just really like it. And it lets you go aggressive or defensive. So I think it used to be my favorite card. Now it's not my favorite card anymore, but it's still pretty close.
No, I figured, and I thought we weren't supposed to mention Oku, but sure. So, what is your favorite deck of all time, and I guess what will be your favorite format too? In the same question.
So, favorite format, I think it really depends, because in general, I like the concept of block constricted a lot, because I feel like in block constricted, you cards that aren't good enough for standard or legacy or whatever, they end up becoming good.
Yes.
So, like you take Vintage, for example. Vintage is a format with, 30,000 cards. But the bar for being good is so high that you might as well just have 100 cards, right? Because the other cards can't compete in power level. So everyone has to play the good cards because they're much better. But when you play block constricted, then you start thinking, well, this card that isn't good enough for standard is maybe good enough here. And then you start, it's like restriction breeds creativity. So you can be more creative because there are less of these limiting factors. Like the better cards there are not that many of the good cards. So you have to play some bad ones, and then you can let creativity flow a bit more. But we've had some bad block constricteds before because the mana was not good enough. So sometimes in block constricted, the mana is very restrictive, so you have to play monocolored, for example. So that makes for a pretty bad format.
Yeah.
So I think for the most part, I really do like the idea of block constructed, but not every block constructed is good. Then I like Legacy a lot. I think Legacy is a format where the small decisions matter a lot, right? Because if you're playing, Soulfly Ultimatum in Standard, you're going to look at your hand. It's going to have one card that costs 2, one that costs 3, one that costs 4, one that costs 7. So on turn 2, you'll play that. On turn 3, you'll play the 3-mana card. Turn 4, you play the 4-mana card. Right? You don't have a lot of choices. Like, if you give 10 people the same hand, they'll play the exact same way, because this is just the only card you can play. But you give 10 people a hand in Legacy, they'll play in 10 different ways. Because it's like, well, there are 3 cards that cost 1, so you can play whichever one. And then they're all instant, so you can play them on your turn or your opponent's. And something like a Brainstorm, you just resolve that completely differently. Right? And then you have, well, maybe you could play a Wasteland instead. Or maybe you could play a basic, or maybe you could fetch for a basic, maybe you could fetch for a duel, right? And these are all small things that you have to decide that have a real impact on the game that I think make it a very interesting format for me to play. As far as my favorite deck, I think there are a couple. I think Fairies, Blue-Black Fairies is probably my favorite deck because... it is similar to Legacy in that regard. Like, a lot of small choices, and also it plays my favorite card, so you might be noticing a theme.
Yeah, of course.
But I really like the idea of, it's tough to go when you have to be aggro. It's tough to know when you have to be defensive. And the deck really rewards you for taking the right posture at the right time, which obviously not every deck does. And I think that really plays to my strengths as a player. Right? I think that is one area where I'm particularly good. Even outside I have many areas where I'm not good compared to the other good players, but this area is one where I'm particularly good, so it plays to my strengths. Like, even among the good players, this is something that I'm very good at. There are a lot of areas in which I'm not very good compared to the good players, but this is one I'm very good at. And so I've always done well with this type of deck, like Dimir Rogues, like Blue-White Delver. These are all decks that I've done very well with, and this is because I'm pretty good at identifying when I have to attack, when I have to defend.
Very tempo.
And Fairies was probably the best of these decks. It was just so many possibilities, right? The fact that you could play anything at any point because everything had flash, and you put your opponent in the squeezes with Cryptic Command or Mistbind Click, right? You could have either one, and then the way to play against that is totally different, so there's this information disparity. So I really like that, and I thought it was a very good deck that I did pretty well with, so it's probably my favorite, yeah.
And in the actual meta, that will be your best deck then? Your favorite deck?
I mean, my favorite deck is probably Dimir Rogues, yeah. I do think, I don't know if it's the best
very
deck.
Strong.
It's one of the best
very
decks.
Strong.
It just won the last tournament. It's not what I played, though. I played Sultai because I thought the meta game was... The thing with Rogues is that your bad matchups are really bad, I think.
Yeah.
Mono-Red, Rakdos, they're really bad matchups.
Yeah.
As opposed to with Sultai. With Sultai, you have more bad matchups, but they're not as bad. Right?
I agree.
So your bad matchups are like 45%. And with Rogues, it's like 30%, right? It's a big difference. So this is why I chose to play Sultai. But yeah, I do like Rogues the most, I think. If we're picking a favorite deck, it will probably be Rogues.
Okay. And so any advice for a good player that wants to go the extra mile and actually become, a pro player or a better player? I know sacrifice is one of the advices that maybe, because you do have to sacrifice a lot to live the life, I guess. But what would be your advice to a good player that wants to go the extra mile?
I mean, I wouldn't even say sacrifice is one of the things, honestly, but I do think, it's a couple of things. I think you'll have to play a lot, right? Yeah. There's just no way around that. Like, I've been playing for over 20 years, right? I've played a lot of Magic in my life, and most players who are good have also played a lot of Magic, so there are no shortcuts to that. Right? You don't have to play as much as I did because I was 8 when I started. I barely absorbed anything that was happening. But you do have to play a lot. I think competing is important. A lot of the time people are like, oh, I don't want to... I'm going to go to this tournament, we're going to play side events because I don't feel ready for the main event yet. And it's like, well, you'll never be ready. Like, this is how you get ready. Right? This is how you remember the lessons that you learned. Yeah, you get to play against better players. Right? And it's going to be more stuck in your mind because it meant more to you, right? If you make a mistake that causes you to lose a game in a Grand Prix, you're not going to make that mistake again, right? But if you make the same mistake on leather, then you're going to keep making the mistake because you'll just not remember a lot of the time. So I think for the most part, trying to compete is probably the most important advice that I would give. But also in terms of mindset, I think people, a lot of the time when we start playing, we blame everything on luck. Right?
Yes.
People are like, oh, I lost because I got unlucky. And then as we get
better... Or the shuffler and arena.
Yeah, well, yes. for that. But as we get better, we change in the other direction, right? We're like, oh, I shouldn't blame everything on luck. I want to improve. I need self-reflection. So I need to know what I did badly. And then people all of a sudden think that they lost every time because they made a mistake. And I think that's actually a pretty hurtful mindset, because you have to accept that Magic is a game in which you are going to lose a lot, regardless of whether you do something right or not, like something wrong or not, right? Like the best players, they win 65% of their games.
Yes.
And then obviously they make mistakes, but even if they didn't make mistakes, they would still not win more than like 75%, right? There's a cap to how much you can win in Magic, and every time you join a tournament, it's likely that you will not do well. Right? If you consider doing well top 8, for example, and you're joining a tournament with 200 people, you're not likely to do well. Right? You're probably not going to do well. And this doesn't have to be because you did anything wrong. Sometimes it is. Sometimes you do lose a game because you chose the wrong deck. Sometimes you do lose because you kept a hand you shouldn't have. Right? And it's important to recognize when that happens so you get better. But you shouldn't be overly harsh on yourself. Right? You have to accept that you were playing a game where most of the time you will not succeed. And most of the time you will fail. And that's very frustrating, and a lot of people just can't deal with that. Right? And they're like, why did I do wrong? Sometimes you didn't do anything wrong. Right? Sometimes people...
Just the odds.
People will send me a hand, and they're like, hey, should I have capped this hand? I'm like, yes, this hand is great. And they're like, yeah, I capped, but my opponent did this, and I lost. So maybe I should have mulliganed. I was like, no. You lost because you lost, and you would have lost regardless of what happened, but you definitely should keep this hand. And it's not because you lost that you did something wrong necessarily, right? So just have this mental state that sometimes, or a lot of times, you're going to lose, and there's not much you can do about that. But also know that you should be introspective, and you should self-reflect and see why you're losing. But sometimes accept that there's just no reason. There's just magic. In Magic, you lose, basically.
The gods of Magic didn't decide that it was your day. So what do you think about Arena? I think we touched about it. We touched a little bit on it, saying that it revolutionized the way that it's faster. Everybody breaks the format faster. But do you enjoy Arena? Do you like it?
I do. Yeah. I think I didn't like Magic Online very much. I thought it was a bit clunky and not very inviting, so I never liked playing it. I do like Magic Arena. I think it is mostly faster, right? Obviously, it's not perfect, right? There are a lot of things that I would do differently, but overall, I think it's a good representation of Paper Magic. It's not the same as Paper Magic, right? At first, I struggled a little bit with it. Right? We had this, transition period where I played real life Magic for 20 years, right? And then all of a sudden, I have to play everything on Arena because there's the pandemic. That is very different. Right, because when I'm playing on Arena, it's harder to focus, for example. Right, I'm this type of person who's like hyperactive, and my opponent will be thinking for too long. I'm gonna start alt-tabbing and looking at my emails, right, because I'm bored. And then that distracts me from the game, and then my dog jumps on me, and that distracts me from the game too, right? Or there's like people start honking outside, and stuff like that. So I think it is harder in that regard, and it's also harder to understand how the priority passes work and what signals the game gives you or doesn't give you, right? So it is stuff that took me a while to get adjusted to, if I'm going to be completely honest, and I don't know if I have fully adjusted to it. I still feel like I play better in person than I did on Arena, because in person I'm forced to concentrate on that, right? There's nothing else. So I think for the most part it's harder in that regard, but I do like it, and I do think it's a big improvement over Magic Online specifically. It was very lucky for Magic players that Arena came out before the pandemic.
I know. I was thinking the same thing. Yeah.
So I'm very happy that he did, and they had this push. Even if it's not the perfect version of what the program should be, it would be much, much worse without it.
Oh, apparently, whenever I bring it up in the groups, there's nothing wrong with Arena, and I was like, man, you haven't played enough. But yeah, it's yeah. But I like it. I like it as well. I enjoy it a lot. So so there has been a lot of technical difficulties with this interview, but I'm so happy that we had it. I'm so happy that you took your time and got with us today. I highly appreciate it. I think I'm gonna leave it at here, Paulo. Anything else you want to say before we go?
No, not really. I mean, just I appreciate being here too.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, of course. Anytime, brother, anytime. And so that's it for the interview. Thank you so much. That's it for this segment. So that was a video. Like I said, I do apologize for the technical difficulties that we had, but we had to share with you. I think it was an amazing interview. I learned a lot personally, and I think it was a great outcome overall. That's it for this video. Wanna thank our sponsors, Dex and Game Inc. Both are linked in the description of this video. Also, comment who do you want to see next on our channel, as well as like and share this video and subscribe so if you haven't done so already. That would be greatly appreciated. That's it for today's video. We'll see you in the next one.